Today, we're honored to have with us a distinguished museum curator who will share with us the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., particularly focusing on his profound impact right here in California. Let's explore the rich tapestry of history and inspiration Dr. King has woven into the Golden State. I'm excited to welcome Susan D. Anderson, history curator for the California African American Museum. Hello, Susan.
Hello, Desiree. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on. We're thrilled you can join us. And I wanted to ask you, given your expertise, can you share some insights into Dr. King's significant contributions and influence specifically within California?
I think a lot of people don't realize that California had a really special relationship with Dr. King and his organization and his work as a civil rights leader. California has a long history of its own civil rights campaigns. In the 19th century, in the 20th century, California was really ahead in a lot of ways. We passed one of the first fair housing laws in the country in 1964. But Martin Luther King started coming to the state in 1957, the year he started the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He spoke at universities, he spoke at churches, he spoke at conferences. He was here every year between 1957 and the year he was assassinated in 1968. And one of the reasons that he came was there was so much support for the Southern Civil Rights Movement here. And an important element was the financial support. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which was King's organization, probably raised more money in California than in any other state in the country. So the level of support in California and collaboration was very high.
Wow. And in your research and curation, are there any lesser known moments or interactions Dr. King had in California that you find particularly impactful?
Well, he went to so many cities in California. That's one of the things that impressed me. In the Bay Area, he was in Berkeley, Oakland, Richmond, San Francisco, Palo Alto. In Southern California, he was in Pasadena, San Diego, Los Angeles. King was in Oakland in 1962. There was a huge celebration in the Municipal Auditorium that year of the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. And he was invited and he spoke there in Oakland, 7,000 people in the audience. And it was the first place that he tried out a theme, the need for a second Emancipation Proclamation that the nation heard later in his famous I Have a Dream speech. And, in 1967, Martin Luther King, Dr. King spoke in Sacramento. He was invited. Young people were very involved in the movement. They were looking for change. Students invited him to campuses, and Dr. King spoke in Sacramento at Sacramento State.
Wow.
And there were at least 7,000 students at Sacramento State who attended that talk that he gave.
And in California, reparations for American descendants of slaves has become a major public issue. What was Dr. King's stance on reparations?
Dr. King was one of the first people in the mid 20th century to talk about reparations. His I Have a Dream speech in Washington, D.C., the first lines were about the need for the United States to make good on the promissory note that it was owed to African Americans. So that moment in civil rights history is very much connected to what we're going through today. California, once again, is ahead of the nation in looking at reparations as an approach for dealing with history and the injustices of the past. And that is a link that does go all the way back to the civil rights movement and Dr. King.
Susan, what role did California play in establishing Martin Luther King Day as a national holiday?
Very important role. It the famous entertainer Stevie Wonder was one of the leaders of that movement. Martin Luther King and the Southern Christian leadership had a long standing relationship with what we call Hollywood. There were so many actors, performers, singers, entertainers who supported that movement, who gave money to it, who came out for huge rallies when King was in Los Angeles or in other parts of California. And that played a role in the struggle and the campaign to make um, Martin Luther King's birthday a national holiday.
Oh, and we enjoy celebrating it every year. Susan, thank you so much for this information, especially the ties to Martin Luther King Jr. in California. Very insightful information. And I'm going to let our viewers know you can learn more by going to caamuseum.org.